Well, we'll just give it a few more minutes, give people some time to come in. So let's see. Non-committee members, I will ask you to please keep your cameras off, and committee members, if you can, please keep your cameras on. Go. Give it another minute. Hey, Juan,
Hey, how's it going?
how are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm so glad to see you.
Happy to see you too.
All right, I think that we can get started. Notes. There we go. Hello, and welcome to the inaugural meeting of the Community Board 2 Cannabis Licensing Committee. Tonight we will hear two businesses, two cannabis dispensaries that are opening soon, very soon, before the end of the year here in Community Board 2. Let's see. First, I would like to do attendance. So if the committee members would say hello. Anthony?
Anthony Wong, board member and also board treasurer.
Yeah. William?
Hi, Will Benish. Nice to see everybody.
Juan?
I am Juan Osorio, a recently addition to the community board too.
Welcome. And then Patricia and Cheryl.
Patricia Laria. Thank you. Hello.
Cheryl Wu, I'm the CB2 member.
And vice chair of this committee.
Vice chair of this committee. Yes, thank you, Mar.
You are. All right. So let's see. All right. Do I hear a motion to adopt the agenda?
Motion.
Thank you. So moved. All right. I want to go through some norms first and just some information. We ask that attendees sign in by typing your name in the chat. So please, attendees, sign your name in the chat. If you are representing a city agency, state agency, a elected official, please include your affiliation or a community group. You will have an opportunity to ask questions or give personal testimony during the public session portion of the meeting. For a faster response, it is strongly suggested that you utilize the provided comment form, which is here. Let's see. Questions via this form will be answered before live testimony. We welcome live testimony that is on topic and 1 minute in length or less. Speakers may be muted without warning if testimony exceeds 1 minute. Speakers who sign up to speak via the comment form will be elevated in the order they were received. Once the committee chair recognizes an attendee, they will be asked to unmute and speak. Attendees should indicate which individual they would like to answer their question, but they should direct their questions or comments to the panel as a whole. Follow-up questions will be allowed only once everyone has had an opportunity to speak. The CB2 Cannabis Licensing Committee seeks to engage diverse perspectives, provide an accessible environment that maximizes the inclusion of all community members and stakeholders, and mitigates bias on the individual, institutional, and process levels. Derogatory or discriminatory language and sentiments will not be tolerated. Live captioning is available at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Just a little reminder, and we're going to remind people over the course of the evening that we are here to address only the 2 items on tonight's agenda. Both are legal businesses. We are not here to discuss illegal shops or Washington Square Park or anything of the like. If you are aware of illicit activity, please report it to the Office of Cannabis Management's Enforcement Unit. Their email address is in the chat. And having said that, we are going to go directly into do we see our panelists? Housing Works is the first item on our agenda. And those questionnaires can be found here. So let's see. Great. I see Charles, and we elevate Charles and Christina. Okay. Representing Housing Works are Charles King and attorney Christina Bucola. Hi, Charles. Will you please turn on your camera so we can see you? Wonderful. Hi. You're muted.
Sorry, it's technology. Good evening, everyone. It's good to see you all. Would you like me to make a brief presentation, or how would you?
Yes, you know what? I'm going to go over the details of your questionnaire quickly so people know what they're listening to.
Okay.
First, this is an adult use retail dispensary selling regulated adult use recreational cannabis in the form of flower, pre-rolls, tinctures, concentrates, edibles, etc. It is located in a residential and commercial mixed-use building at 750 Broadway on the southeast corner of 8th Street and Broadway. Consists of 12 floors, 121 residential units, and 4 commercial units, including a pret-a-manger, restaurant, and 3 spaces formerly occupied by the Gap that have been vacant for almost 3 years. The Broadway door will be used for customer entrance and egress. Deliveries will be accepted at the 8th Street door. The premises the business will utilize has 4,000 square feet of retail space on the street level and 2,000 square feet of basement space, which may or may not be used for offices and storage. There is 1 bathroom. You'll correct me if I'm wrong on that. There are no other licensed cannabis establishments within 1,000 feet, no buildings exclusively used as schools within 500 feet, and no houses of worship within 200 feet. Housing Works Cannabis was provisionally licensed on November 21st by the State Office of Cannabis Management as a qualifying nonprofit under the CARD program. The store is projected to open sometime at the end of the month, with the hours of operation as 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Sunday, for a total of 56 hours. It is expected to expand within 3 months to 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Thursday, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. Friday and Saturday, and 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Sunday, for a total of 72 hours. There will be no music, speakers, or television monitors. There are glass and steel French doors and a closed fixed facade of inoperable windows wrapping the entirety of the north and west sides of the premises. Signage will be in accordance with OCM guidelines. Does that sound right? Okay, Charles, tell us about your business.
Sure. Well, first of all, just a little bit of background for people who might not be familiar with Housing Works. We were organized out of ACT UP, New York in 1990 to serve homeless people living with HIV, very specifically homeless people who experience substance use disorder. We established the first housing program anywhere in the United States, housing people with substance use disorder without regard for their drug use. Very successful program, now mandated for all supportive housing sponsored by the HIV/AIDS Services Administration. We now serve some 15,000 people. We operate nearly 800 units of supportive housing, but we also operate primary care in 4 locations, drug treatment, mental health services, and we have 2 large syringe exchange programs and a drug user health program. We also, since 1993, have had a job training program. Housing Works has a long history, first of all, with Community Board 2. We still operate in our original location, the 6th and 7th floors of 594 Broadway, and we have retail space on Crosby Street on the backside of that same building, both a used bookstore cafe and a thrift shop. In 1993, we opened our first of what has grown to be 12 thrift stores across Manhattan and Brooklyn. And at the same time, we started our first job training program using our thrift stores, not only to generate revenue to support the organization, but also to provide training opportunities and ultimately employment for our consumers. I think it's important to note that job training is a very important part of what we do. We have a ready to work program. We work with people who are leaving incarceration, particularly Rikers Island, to move into employment. About 15% of Housing Works, some 1,000 employees, are former consumers of the program. So having a long history in retail operations, we see cannabis retail as the next stage for us as an organization. There are some federal tax issues that are a barrier, but once we believe we'll be able to get those waived in the next couple of years, and we believe that cannabis retail will then become highly profitable for the organization. And in fact, we intend to use all of the profits from our cannabis stores towards advocacy to address the negative impacts of the war on drugs, cannabis only being a tiny piece of that war on drugs. In addition, we intend to focus our hiring on people who have justice involvement due to cannabis use, and we intend to develop a vocational program for the people we hire and for others who've had justice involvement that would ultimately lead to their meeting the qualifications around entrepreneurship to apply for a license on their own if they choose to pursue that, or to move up in the cannabis industry into management level positions. We believe that the people who have suffered the most from cannabis being illegal deserve the first shot at meaningful opportunity, and that's what we hope to achieve through our program. You've addressed a number of the issues, including the location of a former Gap outlet. That location has been vacant since July 1st of 2020, and with 4,000 square feet on the selling floor, we believe this will provide ample space for crowd control, customer waiting, and the like. 1/3 of this space will be carved out for pickup and delivery, and we intend to eventually scale up to 10 registers, and that means also 10 display cases, as customers are not allowed to handle the product on their own and can only see it in the presence of a staff person at a register. We anticipate a soft launch of December 29th, and you've already spoken to our hours. I want to make sure people understand we will ensure on-site security. We've hired a security company to provide that service for us. We will be checking IDs of anyone who enters the store twice. First, upon entry, you won't be able to go into the store without showing an ID, and you will not be able to make a purchase without showing an ID. No cannabis products will be viewable from outside the store in keeping with state regulations, And our branding, again, in accordance with state regulations, is designed not to attract people under the age of 21. As I alluded to before, we've been operating in the East and West Village since 1991. For many years, we operated an AIDS Adult Day Healthcare Center and Primary Care Center on West 13th Street, in addition to our program at 594 Broadway. And of course, for well over nearly 30 years, we've been operating a residence day treatment center and a syringe exchange program on the corner of 9th Street and Avenue D in Board 3. I think it's fair to say that we have maintained very good relationships both with our community boards, our elected officials, and with our neighbors. We will, as we do at all of our locations, discourage any kind of loitering in proximity of the building, and we will ensure cleanliness of the sidewalks, again, as we do at all of our locations. We have, over the last 2 weeks, done a significant amount of outreach to institutions and community groups in the local neighborhood. So I've personally talked with the pastor of Grace Church and provided him with information, which he has also provided to the principal at Grace High School, though it is outside the 500-foot requirement. We have also reached out to folk at the Harvey Milk High School, although OCM deems it not to be school grounds because it doesn't take up an entire building. We have still reached out and asked for their support in moving this forward. We've also reached out to Judson Church, to Stuyvesant and 10th Street Block Association, the Public Theater, the 3rd Street Music School, NYU Government Affairs, East Village Community Coalition, Cooper Square Committee, Middle Collegiate Church, the Lower East Side Small Business Alliance, and the Greenwich Village Preservation. And we intend to continue to do outreach as we identify other folk who would be interested parties. We also intend to do outreach to the residents who live above our retail space. I think I'll stop there and take any questions that folk might have.
Wonderful. Does the committee have any questions? Oh, there you are. Okay. Cheryl.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. King, for that presentation. I looked through your questionnaire as well as the some of the other literature you submitted. I have 2 questions. The first one is concerning the menu, actually. As you can imagine, I've been reading a lot, in the last day or 2. But my question is, first, I think the regulations have said that prices had to be available on the menu. And the second question I have is, as a medical professional, you can imagine one of the things I want to make sure is safety and transparency. So I'm wondering if you could comment on, I had to Google, what wedding cake is and all that stuff. So I'm wondering if you can comment on the level of THC versus CBD within each product and how you're going to go about educating the customers. I think that's like section 15 on the regulations. And I also think just as one of the first organizations, we kind of set the tone. So I'm curious to hear you. This real quick, short second question I have for you, which actually doesn't have to do with, the cannabis. And, by the way, I really do enjoy all of this. This is really great. But my question for you is, I really do applaud the Housing Works mission and what you've done. My little plug is, I think LGBTQIA+ Asian youth. I think maybe we can talk offline, to see how we can give back to that community and mental health and all that. So I read through your whole spiel. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Wu. And just so you know, I also serve on the board of Aperture. And so very interested and concerned about not just HIV in the Asian community, but life impacts on LGBT members of the Asian community. So definitely a priority from my perspective. Let me talk a little bit about product. First of all, right now there's very limited product available. We anticipate that in January, February, March, we will see much more product coming online. But right now we have not actually selected the initial product we'll be launching with. In terms of pricing, you know, we're in an interesting position. We know that right now there's a lot of illegal cannabis operations out there, and we're not going to be successful if we price too high above those. But we're also cognizant that we have to pay state and federal taxes. And with the federal taxes, we don't have the same deductions because cannabis remains a Schedule I drug. We need to get that removed, and that would greatly reduce our state tax and allow us to lower our prices. We do have to operate at a profit, obviously, but our goal is to come as close to the price that is being offered as we possibly can. You know, we've seen in some jurisdictions where, due to taxes and other things, there have been high prices that have kept the underground market thriving more successfully than the legal market. And we don't want to replicate that.
Can I speak to the educational aspect of this? That's such a great question.
I'm so sorry, Christina.
No, you're doing it. You barely need me, Charles. So just on the educational front, so good that you've asked that question. There are a number of educational pieces that consumers will be presented with. And some of that is by statute and by regulation. So in every dispensary, and including in Housing Works Cannabis dispensary, there will be material that is made available by Housing Works, but also material that is made available by OCM. And that's going to talk about cannabis risks of overconsumption, of how to dose, of other aspects. They will not include, and I know this will interest you as a health professional, there will be no health claims that are made, right? And so sometimes we see very wild verbiage around what cannabis can and cannot do. That won't happen. Another part of the educational piece is that everyone who works at Housing Works Cannabis will be very well educated on how to present to the consumer. And that education runs the gamut from the history of prohibition to, again, go low, go slow, how to interact with your cannabis, and where they can go to find additional information. So we're really excited about the ability to present all of this information to customers going forward.
And as a matter of fact, if I could just add one more point to that, it's important to note that in order to even explore the product, and certainly to make a purchase, a customer will have to interface with a bud tender who, as Christina said, we intend to be highly trained and be able to answer any questions that people have. Even if they don't bother to read the flyer, they have somebody who they can ask, who can give them accurate information, particularly around the content of the various products that they might be interested in pursuing.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Education is literally, so important. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Wonderful, William.
Thanks, Maren. Thanks, Charles. Good to see you again. Appreciate your presentation. You actually just mentioned the bud tender, and that's kind of what my question is on. Can you just speak a little more to kind of the training plan that you're putting together for the staff that you're going to be bringing on board? I'd be curious to hear a bit more about that. Thanks.
Sure. So the initial training, there's actually training that is prescribed in the cannabis regulations, and that includes a lot of what Christina described, and she may want to further elaborate on that. But in addition to that, as I say, we will be offering people training in more intensive training in cannabis, as well as cannabis management, as well as in entrepreneurship. Our goal is to be able to offer, say, a 6-month program where someone could get certified as a cannabis entrepreneur and therefore be eligible to apply for their own license. Christina, did you want to address more of the training specific?
Sure. I think what we can say is the guiding principle of training is all about safety, and that's safety for the consumers, that's safety for the bud tenders, that's safety of the program, and making sure that cannabis is not diverted outside of it. So it's going to take a number of formats, right? Again, just understanding the impacts and the effects of cannabis, advising on that, advising as to the storage of cannabis, but also understanding and being educated about how to, even though that there are going to be multiple points of identification check, how to spot intoxication, how employees can say, hey, we don't want to sell to this individual because they seem to be intoxicated or because they're seemingly under 21. And also looking at points in the cannabis chain to see if there might be any kind of diversion. So we're going to educate about all of these things, and they all amount to safety in the end.
Wonderful. Patricia?
Yes, thank you, Christina, for the explanation. I'm worried about seeing that you're one of 2 card licenses issued in CB2. How will you manage the crowd, that will gather outside, traffic, sidewalk? How will you manage them once they're inside? Because you just said there are going to be 10 display cases. How much time is each person allowed? Will there be appointments issued? How will you manage that, knowing that you're one of 2 card licenses issued in CB2?
Sure. First of all, I think the 2 licenses in CB2 are likely to be 2 of the first cannabis retail outlets to open anywhere in Manhattan and probably in New York City altogether. So we do anticipate and we hope we'll have a crowd. We're a retail establishment, so it's not by appointment. People can come and shop during our operating hours. But as I said, so we have 10 stations, and of course, part of the training for the bud tenders is not just to educate the customers, but it's also to expedite helping them achieve a decision and make a purchase, right? So with roughly 3,000 square feet available for people to mill about, we can absorb something of a crowd inside, which is what we hope to be able to do. But if we do have a larger crowd, particularly in the early days when there aren't other retail establishments around, we would be establishing stanchions and create a line running south down the block. Right now, there's no other retail open on the Broadway side of the building. All 3 Gap stores closed. And so we'll be able to line people up, and we will also be able to patrol that line and invite people to leave if they're acting in a way that is at all disruptive to the community or to the environment we're trying to create.
May I ask a follow-up?
Sure.
Will there be a time limit once they get inside the store? Because if you said there's going to be a line possibly out down the
block. So like any retail, I don't know that you would feel very comfortable going into any retail establishment where somebody said to you, you can only be in here for 5 minutes. But we're assuming people are coming in to make a purchase. And they're going to come in, and if they know what they want, the purchase will be fairly quick. If they need help making a selection, the purchase will be longer. But we don't anticipate that people are going to be dawdling over a display case for for 20 minutes or more. Our goal is obviously to bring up sales, and we can't bring up sales if somebody's hogging a display case and cash register. So we have an incentive to keep people moving even without establishing some fixed time limit that we're holding people to.
Okay, thanks.
Is that it for committee questions? Yeah, I have one, and actually I asked this of Ms. Bucola yesterday. Will you offer delivery?
We will be offering delivery. You may have seen that the Office of Cannabis Management has actually invited licensees to offer delivery even before they open their retail. We don't intend to do that. We intend to offer delivery concomitant with our retail. We will also have it structured so that a person could place an order online, make that purchase online, and come by and pick up in lieu of delivery.
I just want to add here that the ID checks are going to be present in delivery as well, right? So delivery can be done either on a platform that's specific to Housing Works or over the phone. And at that point, there will be an ID check. At the point where someone comes into the store to pick up their order, there will be 2 additional ID checks, of course, one to get in, one for the pickup at the point that the product is passed on to the customer. For individuals who will be making the delivery, those individuals will also be asked to look at ID and confirm ID upon meeting the customer.
Thank you. Cheryl?
Sorry, I have a follow-up question to that. I saw that, and I think it was the regulations in Colorado. There's actually, after a couple of years of being legalized over there, cannabis, they've had to revise stuff and say that the packaging should be childproof. And I do see that in pediatrics, you know, kids who kind of get into it, as well as clear verbiage that says that this is for adult consumption only. So I'm just wondering about that now that we know that there's a delivery option. Thank you.
I can take this, Charles. Indeed, there are going to be safety measures around packaging. There's going to be language that is specified by OCM that talks about this is, this product contains cannabis, contains THC. There'll be nursing people's warning on there as well. And so there will be plenty of demarcations of product that it is in fact THC containing and is intended for adults 21 years of age and upwards. I'd also like to take this moment to explain that the branding and the marketing of cannabis products is going to be pretty plain, right? We don't have a lot of room under New York State's guidelines, and there's nothing going to be that's attractive to children. So no cartoons, no bubble letters, no neon, no, there's not even going to be in advertisements, there's no smoking or vaping images as well. So this is, I think if New York had its way, it would all be Arial or Times New Roman font. We're going to get a little bit more creative than that, but it's certainly not intended to be attractive to individuals under 21.
And I should just add to that briefly that the packaging is done by the processor. We cannot repackage or brand any product.
Thank you.
Sue Wittenberg? Oh, are there any more committee questions? Nope. All right. We are going to board member questions. Sue Wittenberg?
Hi, thank you. I'm glad to see everyone and happy this is finally happening for us. I had a sort of question comment merges because you covered a lot of really good information. One thing from having observed dispensaries in Massachusetts, New Jersey, California, having people order ahead and come for pickup is a big help in terms of moving people through.
Sure.
And that's something, I've seen work and I share the concern about crowd control, so to speak, because, even clothing stores in our area, I live in Soho, crowd control is so important. And sometimes maybe one person's not enough. We just don't know. Manhattan, based on everything I've read, is very delivery oriented. So I don't think that's going to change. And there's such a robust gray market that that's not going to change immediately either, certainly from a dispensary or two. And, you know, the price point that you mentioned in the beginning matters a lot, because in other states where there's been more time has gone by, it's competitive. And, you know, we have chains like Curaleaf, which are half the price of the independent sellers. And that has impacted independent sellers in places like Massachusetts, where after a year or two, groups have to become groups because they just can't manage. And essentially it's a luxury good, because it's, you know, so I'm always curious, like in New York, we have a robust gray market, much more than other places because of our new laws, which are good. I mean, so I'm not advocating people selling on the street, but it's so easy now, you know, for people to access the gray market where it might not have been before. So, and most Manhattanites do the delivery. So who are you anticipating as the primary customers? Do you see it as tourists, or how are you envisioning that?
So you asked a whole bunch of questions in
I
that.
know.
Let me
I
try
figured
and
out you. Answer whichever ones you like.
let me try and knock through them. First of all, we anticipate we're located very centrally in Lower Manhattan. We have all of Ward 3, all of Ward 2. We have NYU. We have another university right next to us. So we anticipate a full diversity of customers. We will be from the get-go allowing people to order and purchase online, and either for delivery or for pickup, which, as you say, will expedite people moving through the store. The other thing I would point out, I don't know if you've ever seen one of our thrift stores at our traditional fall and spring openings. When we have those openings, people are paying $500 to get in the store to shop, and there will be a line down the block. And so we are very used to the idea that store events can create heavy traffic, and it's up to us to have enough staff out in front of the store to police that traffic and ensure that the line is moving smoothly and no one is doing anything in the line that creates any kind of disruption. I think you asked a couple more questions, but they're escaping me. I don't know if Christina caught any of them that I missed.
Some of it is the pricing, you know,
Yeah,
which is.
pricing.
Sure. So on pricing, just to be very clear, I can say two things. First of all, again, our pricing, we want to price as low as we possibly can, but we have some dictates in terms of what the product costs us, what our operating expenses are, and both the state and federal taxes that we have to pay. That is going to dictate the pricing. More long term, we have had conversations. There's now a statewide cannabis association, and we've had conversations with them and others about the possibility of aggregating retailers for joint purchasing as a way to reduce the cost and allow us to be competitive with some of these larger chains that, as you say, have been able to undercut independent
and knock them out. You know, that's
sure.
That's not what we want, but that's great. And I know that you certainly have dealt with crowds, and that's good. But living in Soho, the crowds are so dangerous. I mean, we've had issues with. I mean, we're talking about people waiting online outside Dior. And we still need we have a police presence. So I'm not minimizing what a crowd can mean.
I used to work in Soho, so I'm very familiar.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
All right. Carter.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for a great presentation, and welcome to our community and to CB2. You touched on in your application what you had submitted about illegal dispensaries, and I was wondering if Housing Works has a position on illegal dispensaries, particularly, because I think that's impactful in the first year of your business and your success. I understand the 9th precinct currently has received complaints of 51 illegal stores in the precinct, and you guys are in the 9th precinct. Also, a few more questions on security. Stick-up robberies have been occurring in the illegal dispensaries around the city. And do you have any more detailed security plans to address that type of a risk, and security regarding people making deliveries, and parties? You sort of touched on a little bit on parties, but can you elaborate a little bit more about
I'm
that?
sorry,
I think
parties? I'm not clear what you're.
I was told that they might do 4, 1 each quarter.
So I think that was just said.
I just said, I just wanted to get everything out and then you guys can respond. And then just for the basement space, I was just wondering if you could elaborate on the basement space, and particularly because the certificate of occupancy says it's for storage only, even though we all know that's not how it's been used for many years, but that's the legal use. Thanks.
So
Those are my questions.
let me start with the last, since it's top of mind. We are looking at the possibility of amending the certificate of occupancy so that we can expand the use of the basement. But right now we intend to use the basement for secure storage and for staff offices, break room, that sort of thing. So right now we have no intentions of consumers entering into the lower level. With regard to the security, well, first of all, with regard to the illegal operations, we consider them to be illegal operations. We understand that the mayor's position was he wasn't going to have the police crack down on them until there were legal stores up and running. We've also had a lot of conversation with the Office of Cannabis Management, and they assure us that once we are open, they are going to start aggressively targeting illegal cannabis operations that are in our vicinity, and we're going to work very hard to hold them to it. We're paying taxes. Illegal operations are not paying taxes, so it's that affects our price point, but it also means that both the city and the state benefit from our operations in a way that they will never benefit from an illegal operation. So it's in everyone's interest to drive the illegal operations out of business. With regard to security, our single biggest step with regard to security is not having significant cash available. So cash gets deposited into a security vault that staff do not have any access to. We have an arrangement with a bank. The bank will come by daily in an armored truck, collect all of the cash, so that if somebody came to rob us, they would get the amount of money that's in the register, which would be a de minimis sum. So they're not going to get a huge benefit. Christina, I'll let you address the quarterly events.
Oh, yeah. I don't know that there are any definitive events in the works, but if there were going to be any event, they would be fully compliant with OCM law. They, again, would be restricted to individuals who are over 21 years of age. Any kind of limits on providing gifts and to individuals would also be enforced. I don't think that there are any immediate plans to have any large events. Sorry, go on.
Just
Charles.
like to maybe reserve that option as part
Yeah,
of it.
yes, and just to be clear, we are not allowed. There will be a license possibility next year for on-site consumption, but right now we're not allowed any type of on-site consumption and would have to go through a whole new application process and before you all again if we chose to go after that once that application comes out. We are also not allowed to discount to like for an event or anything like that. So any event that we would do would be a sales event, and frankly, as Ms. Wittenberg suggested, as long as we have lines outside the door, we've got no good reason to do anything to draw more customers than we already have.
Great, thank you. I'm looking forward to you guys opening. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carter. All right, so we have a number of questions that were put into the comment card form. Thank you, everyone that did that. And we will go through them now. Okay. Oh, you know what? I want to take a minute to acknowledge some of the people that are in attendance tonight. Biani from Councilmember Rivera's office, thank you so much for coming. I see Josh Tepperberg from Unlock, which is the premier legacy organization. Sorry, I have to go through this. Paul Rangel. Hi, Paul, who's the chair of CB3. Susan Stetzer, who is the district manager from CB3 as well. Catherine Ellington, who is the chair of the Cannabis Task Force for CB5. And of course, our wonderful chair of CB2, the entire board, Janine Kiley, who is here on our panel. And if I forgot anybody, sorry. Oh, there's Leslie, with Leslie Williams from CB4. There we go.
Don't mess that up.
I know. And Lupe Hernandez from CEC2, which is the Community Education Council. So wonderful. Thank you all for being here tonight. All right, so the questions are, do you plan to have locations beyond those listed? What is the plan related to crowding and smoking outside your doors?
Okay, I think I've addressed the crowding plan already with the stanchions and having staff ensure a single line with people not being disruptive. We will not prohibit smoke. We will not allow smoking in front of the stores. We will ask anyone who's smoking to move away from our location to do that. And if they decline to do that, we won't permit them to enter the store. There was another part to that I think I missed. Crowding, smoking, and Mar, you're on mute.
Are you going to open any other dispensaries?
Oh,
I believe you're
so yes.
You're entitled to 3 under card,
yes,
right?
So we do contemplate once we've got this under our belt and have a good handle. You know, this is our training ground. And we do intend to open as many as 2 more, probably in Manhattan, but in other parts of Manhattan. We've looked at locations in Midtown. We've looked at locations on the Upper West Side. So yeah, if all goes well, this time a year from now, we would be operating 3 retail outlets.
Wonderful. All right. Sorry, lots of questions. How will the customer pay? Will they pay cash, credit, check? What will the verification of IDs look like?
So people have to produce a city or state approved ID. So verification of ID is confirming that the picture on that ID is the person in front of us and that the age is an age where someone is eligible to consume. So that's the ID verification. I'm sorry, I missed something here again.
It was, how will they pay?
Oh, I'm sorry. So this is a cash only business because of the federal prohibition. So people will not be able to use a credit card to pay. They will be able to pay using cash or a debit card. Typically in our business, we do not accept checks for obvious reasons. There's very few businesses that accept checks these days for retail. So it's going to be cash or debit card. And by the way, it would be a debit card if somebody was purchasing online as well.
Okay. How will you protect customer data? What POS system will you be using?
So we are still awaiting. The POS system is dictated by the Office of Cannabis Management, and we are awaiting their guidance on what POS system they would like for us to acquire.
And we're actually prevented by statute from sharing customer data with other parties.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. Somebody asked, how will you compete with the illegal sales that are going on around the neighborhood?
Well,
yeah, I feel like you answered that already.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, good. All right, so now we will take questions from, Dr. Smith. Oh, yes, Dr. Smith.
Thank you. Thanks for coming, and to the guests who are actually on the call. My question to you would be, hold on a second. Okay, yeah. How are you going to determine those future locations that you referenced?
Well, so any location that we propose actually has to be approved by the Office of Cannabis Management, but very similar to this location, where we're looking for a location that we think will provide a successful retail environment. We know that so residential density is important to us. Student population nearby, since college university students are potential customers, could be important to us. So we already have a thrift store on Broadway in the Upper West Side. So something in that vicinity might be attractive to us. There's a diversity of places in Midtown, and one of the things that we have to, one of the competing interests is rent versus perfect location. So some of the prime locations are incredibly expensive, and so we'll be looking for something close to the hotspot, but at a lower price of rent.
And just to add to that,
thank you.
Retail locations need to be 500 feet from school grounds and 200 feet from religious sites. So religious establishments, sorry. So that will also help determine where locations end up.
Correct.
Thank you, Christina. Anthony?
Thank you.
Oh, just checking back on your application, just wanted to clarify what will be on the 2 TV screens that you indicated on the application. In terms of identification, foreign passports will be acceptable too. And then in terms of security, that's the third one. The third one is, where will the people be lining up? Is it on 8th Street, or will it be on Broadway?
So right now we're intending, if we need to line people up, that we would line them up on Broadway, and that's specifically because right now there's no retail outlet open there, and so lining people up on Broadway would not interfere or obstruct with any other business. And I said state and city ID. Yes, we would accept federal ID, and if someone was an international customer, we would accept a foreign passport as a legitimate identification.
And then the last one about the TV screen, what will be displayed?
Christina, do you have information on that?
I don't have any information on TV screens, but I would imagine that any screens that we do have up internally would actually list the inventory that we have and their pricing. And so that's how it would usually run. But I did not think we were definitely not employing any TV screens external to the store. So any kind of screens internally would be with respect to product and product pricing.
Might also have educational information on running across the screen as well. One of the things that is very important to us, and I think Christina alluded to this in answer to Ms. Wu's question, is we do place a very high value in educating our customers, with safety being our preeminent concern.
Well, if your business is, very successful in the future, I mean, in the short term, perhaps you should expand into the women's gap. That's right, the next door, right? Rather than just the men's gap that you're occupying, right?
Thank you for that recommendation.
Wonderful. We have more questions on the form. Thank you, everyone who's actually asking your questions through the form. Let's see, I don't know what this means. What is a green zone? Is that like where it's okay to consume cannabis? Is that slang? Anyone? Nope, nobody knows.
I'm not familiar with the term.
Yeah, somebody asks, what is a good reference to see available green zones in New York City? I mean, the law says you can smoke cannabis anywhere you can smoke cigarettes. So, you can't do it in parks. You can't do it 200 feet from schools.
Except in cars. You can't smoke in cars.
And you can't smoke in cars because we don't want impaired driving. Let's see. Do you have plans on how you will work with those communities most impacted by the war on drugs?
Yes, so absolutely. So first of all, specific to cannabis, if you look at our advertising for staff for this facility, we prioritize people with a history of criminal justice involvement relative to cannabis. So our first goal is to employ. Our second goal is to provide training that allows people to advance in the industry, including we're hoping to negotiate a training program with the Office of Cannabis Management that would result in trainees getting a certificate in entrepreneurship that would allow them to meet the criteria for applying for their own cannabis license. In terms of other impacts of the war on drugs, we're already heavily involved in various issues that impact on people that use drugs, everything from bail to incarceration, length of incarceration, what happens to people when they get discharged from incarceration, reentry programs that allow people who have been incarcerated for drug-related offenses to actually get back into the community and get established with a job. There's also a lot of policy work that we need to do around this. So, for example, somebody who's has a felony conviction, particularly for substances, can be barred from public housing and other types of housing, all of which are just huge barriers to allowing people who have been punitively sanctioned to establish themselves in a healthy and productive way. So all of that, it fits within our advocacy venue.
Wonderful, thank you. Kashif actually clarified his question, and his question about green zones, which maybe you can answer, but I am going to give you a handy tool, Kashif, if you're interested in opening your own dispensary. OCM currently does not have a mapping project. What I've been using and what I've been telling all my friends that are opening, anyone who will listen, these licensees, use LAMP. LAMP is the State Liquor Authority mapping project.
Yes.
And if you type an address into LAMP, you can see any radius of what's there, schools, houses of worship, other licenses. And so I've also given this handy tool to OCM and said, you guys need one of these, or you need to piggyback on this one. Because with cannabis, the law is a little different. We measure door to door for SLA, but for cannabis, we actually measure from the entire campus of the location. So it's a little bit different, but Kashif, if you want to go look at LAMP and type in the location you're thinking of, and then use the slider to say, 500, 1,000, 200 feet, and it'll tell you if it's a good choice for a place to have a dispensary.
Yes, I actually need to thank Christina because she introduced us to this tool, and it will make it much easier as we look for additional locations. So
great. All right. And I meant to ask, and I apologize if this has been said already. I'm like doing a million things, but are your program participants going to be working in the store?
So we have an affirmative action policy for both employees and consumers of Housing Works. So if a consumer applies and meets the employment qualifications, they would be prioritized for employment, just as we do in every other business that we operate. So definitely, and in particular, obviously, we serve a lot of consumers who have justice involvement relative to marijuana and other drugs, and so they fit totally within our prioritization for employment.
Wonderful, thank you. And as a reminder, we are not using derogatory language. Words like drug dealer and criminal are not a part of this committee. So yes. The hiring of justice involved people, I think, is very appropriate for this kind of business. Thank you. All right, if that is all the questions, we will go to the public. Catherine. Hi, Catherine.
Hi, my name is Catherine Ellington Mars. Good to see you. I'm the CB5 Cannabis chair, and we spent a good time looking at time, place, and manner in the proposed regulations. But I just have a specific question around, I think you call them processors, but I know New York is trying to make this a local board, like you can't sell the cannabis, you can't grow the cannabis and sell it. You have to have different suppliers. So I was wondering where your supply was coming from. And my second comment is that as you move toward online and maybe app-based purchases, what will be the span of your delivery area? And will you have signage on your trucks that point to who you are as you're delivering, and just trying to bring some vision around that?
Sure. So first of all, in terms of the processors, we are required to purchase from New York State growers and processors. So processors processing product grown in New York State. Right now, we are in discussion with I believe it's 5 different processors who currently have product. Again, most of them have very limited product, and so we'll be buying from folk until we get an expansive enough array of product that we desire. In terms of delivery, we have not yet set a delivery area. I think we want to test the market before we do that. I can safely say that we will undoubtedly limit our delivery to Manhattan, but we haven't set an upper boundary for doing that. We will not be delivering using a truck or any kind of visible marking. In New York, delivery is usually done by bicycle or motor scooter or public transportation. And so that's what we intend. We intend for our delivery people to be as discreet as possible.
Thank you, Pat. Our next question is from Zella Jones.
Yeah. Hello. I have great respect for Housing Works and everything that you do and have done for a really long time. I need to start off with that.
Thank you.
And I have absolutely no objection to the sales of cannabis overall. As somebody who watches this particular community that you'll be entering, I have some specific questions. I originally, and I could have misheard, that your opening hours would be from 11 until 7, and then later I heard something about till 11 p.m. Could you clarify that, please? I have 2 other questions, but I'll let you have the first one first.
Okay, so sure. For our soft launch, which will be the 29th of December, we intend to be open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Once we begin full operation, we intend our hours to be 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and then 11 to 11 on Friday and Saturday, and 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Sundays.
Okay, since everybody's used to using LAMP, I just want to remind you that there are more than 20 licensed establishments within 600 feet of your location. And that brings some concern as a community member, the juxtaposition of alcohol and cannabis, particularly with the hours that you plan to expand to. I'm just registering that as a concern. That you are very, very close to Grace Church School and Grace Church High School.
Sorry, can you please wrap it up? You only get 1 minute to speak. So can you finish your point?
I'm worried about illegal IDs in that we have a very large population between colleges and high schools in this particular area, and how you intend to deal with that. Most bars have to have some sort.
Thank you. Should we review again the ID requirements and the 2 checkpoints you will have?
Sure. We will be checking ID. It does have to be, as I said before, city, state, or federally approved ID with photo. So we will obviously be using the photo to ensure that that's appropriate. I'm not going to say that somebody couldn't get past us with a fraudulent ID, but that's actually quite important to us. It would put our license in jeopardy if we were selling to underage people. So we have every incentive to ensure that we don't do that. One of the things that we have offered both the schools that are nearby is to work with them to educate their students about cannabis, including cannabis safety. I appreciate that there are liquor establishments in our vicinity. Obviously, I don't have any control over that. I will say that, at least in my experience, people choose one drug or the other. But obviously, I can't do anything if somebody is deciding to use both. They're going to be purchasing on our premises. They're not going to be using there.
Not only that, but Housing Works reserves the right to deny entry to anyone, particularly if they're showing physical intoxication.
Sure.
Or if someone is uncertain. Let's say someone presents an ID and yet they seem very young, or it doesn't seem to match up. Housing Works will also similarly deny them entry.
Correct.
Wonderful. Jeffrey Rowland has a question.
Hi, you may be revealing my ignorance on this subject. Will the product contain information, the packaging, much like alcohol does, where it tells you the percent of by volume, so that you know how strong it is or how weak it is? Is that a requirement under the state law? And
Yes.
how will that be numerical, like 1, 2, 3, 4, or will it be 10%, or what's the descriptor?
It'll be by milligrams of cannabinoids, which are THC, CBD, CBG. Edibles will also have ingredients listed, and it will be by percent, but there also may be milligrams involved.
Would there be any kind of chart that indicates the relative strength of these descriptions, so that I could tell when I'm looking at it, because I won't understand the percent of THC or whatever? Will there a way to compare which one is stronger, which one isn't, in some chart?
Sure, I believe that we can incorporate into the education one way or another, the go low, go slow, and educate people on the relative percentage of THC that are in their products.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. The only other question I had was, in general, is there going to be some? Yeah, this
You're
quick.
way
Is there gonna,
over.
it can be very quick. Is there a place in the state where I can go and see which places are legitimate retailers of product as opposed to aren't? There's a listing somewhere?
I believe that OCM, which is the Office of Cannabis Management, that is the state agency that is tasked with overseeing our all of our cannabinoid programs in the state. There will be a list. Right now, there are no open legal dispensaries for adult use in the state. There is a list of the initial awardees of the provisional license for card that you can examine, but ostensibly OCM will in fact have that.
There is also a list of medication dispensaries, but they are very different in a very different licensing process.
Thank you. Kashif will be our last speaker.
All right, hello.
Hey.
All right, so I live here in California, but I'm a New York native, and I'm seeing a bubble about to burst over here in LA with people not really paying back brands and net terms. What is your plan on paying back brands in a timely fashion, and are you going to accept net terms from brands? Thank you.
So, first of all, we won't be in business very long, I don't think, if we're not paying our producers in a timely fashion. We are not allowed to negotiate any kind of special pricing with producers. So I'm not sure if that's what you were referring to or something else that I'm not understanding.
Just the agreement of I'll front you this amount of product and you'll pay me back in 30 days. Not necessarily a discount, but just sometimes checks take longer to clear for businesses, and I was wondering if you were going to take those practices on, or is it just going to be COD on every product?
Well, it probably will not be COD on every product, but you know, I think Housing Works has a pretty good reputation of paying on a timely fashion to our vendors, and we would certainly want to uphold this. I think as more retail comes online, if you're a retailer who's known for not paying timely, you're not going to have the quality of sources that you want.
Thank you, Charles. Yeah, Kashif, I mean, these are operating organizations and they're rather large. So, you know, this is not people who are opening their first dispensary and maybe getting themselves into trouble. But thank you so much for asking that question.
Of course, thank you.
All right. Susan Stetzler, District Manager of CB3. Hi, Susan.
Hi, thank you.
I am so sorry, Susan. Because you did sign up like days ago.
Yes, thank you. So I have been, my name is Susan Stetzer. I've been District Manager, Community Board 3 for 18 years. And I've been working with Housing Works during that time. And I want to speak to Housing Works as a good neighbor. I was also active in the community previous to when Housing Work first built their residence on 9th Street. And there were some in the neighborhood who thought the residents and programs would be disruptive, but that never happened. Housing Works has been very helpful as part of our provider community. For example, we've recently had problems with needles in 2 parks. And when we discussed with Housing Works, they offered to install needle kiosks and maintain them. And they have been working with parks to continue to maintain these kiosks. We've connected with them with Goddard Homeless Outreach, and they've been productive in joint outreach operations. And at the beginning of the pandemic, when masks were scarce, they had a surplus and called CB3 for the best distribution. Since the incidence of AIDS has decreased, they have expanded medical programming to those in need in the immediate community. We work with Housing Works on our district needs and budget priorities, and we consider them a close community partner.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you so much, Susan. Okay. Well, we see no more questions, which is great. Nope. Sorry. My computer. Okay. So let's move on. I want to thank Charles and Christina for coming tonight.
It was our pleasure.
Thank you so much. And it is amazing hearing about this exciting new business. And that's all. You're invited to stay but you will be demoted to attendees.
That is quite fine. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Have a great night.
You as well, to all of you. Thank you.
Okay. I am looking for Paul and Arena. Do you guys see them? There's Paul. Paul, what name is Arena under? Oh, there she is. She is Paul. You're muted.
That's very odd that I'm named Paul here.
So which one? Because you also registered.
I sure did. You know what? Maybe I clicked
Well, which
on.
Paul is Paul? Because I have 5, 6.
Oh my gosh. Maybe I need to log out and go into my
Paul, raise your
dedicated
hand.
link.
The real Paul. Will the real Paul? Yeah, raise your hand. Wasn't that a show in the 60s? No. Do you want to text him and we'll pull him up when he's ready?
Yeah, I know he's on because we've been.
Okay, while you're doing that, I'm just gonna go over the specs that you gave to us. Second item on our agenda is the Doe store. It was also provisionally licensed on November 21st as part of the CARD program. Cheryl, will you drop the CARD link again so people know what that is? Let's see. This is an adult use retail dispensary selling high-end cannabis products with a mixture of flowers, pre-rolls, edibles, vape pens, and THC-infused beverages. The 2-story store is located in a 5-story residential and commercial building at 853 Broadway. 835 Broadway, doing that. 835 Broadway on the southwest corner of 13th Street and Broadway, consisting of 5 floors with 7 residential units above the 1 commercial unit. There is a service entrance at 62 East 13th Street that would be used for deliveries. The premises will utilize, let's see, it has 4,723 square feet of retail space at the, now, I'm not clear, it's 2 levels. So it's 2 levels. We'll hear from them what's being used for retail and what is being used for otherwise. There appear to be 3 bathrooms. There are no other licensed cannabis establishments within 1,000 feet, no buildings exclusively used as schools within 500 feet, and no houses of worship within 200 feet. There is a comprehensive security plan in accordance with OCM guidelines that includes a minimum of 3 uniformed guards. They will use stanchions and ropes as needed. Hours of operation are 8 a.m. to 12 a.m. 7 days a week for a total of 112 hours. They will have a music playlist on rotation inside the dispensary at an appropriate volume. They will showcase branded content absent of sound on video monitors. And they are not personally making any changes to the facade, but the landlord is actually in process. Cheryl, will you drop the questionnaires again so people can see the beautiful old picture of the original facade? They're actually restoring it to its original splendor. Right now, it's kind of like metal and steel, but it's going to be gorgeous and stone when that's done. Signage will be in accordance with OCM guidelines.
And excuse me, Ma, Irena dropped out, but she's back on. So if you could promote her.
I will.
Sorry, thank you.
There we go. So did all that sound right?
That
Hey,
did
Irena.
sound correct.
So tell everybody who you are and about your business. And you're muted.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Mar, so much. I just wanted to start off with asking, how much time do we have? I don't want us to run too late.
How long is your presentation?
I could run through it very quickly. I'm just going to pull up slides if that's okay.
That's fine.
Okay, great. But I'm happy to just run through it very quickly. So my name is Irena Hankin. Pleasure to meet you all. Thank you so much for having us this evening. I'm the president of the Doe Store, which is just our placeholder name as we develop our brand. And just a little bit about ourselves. The Doe Fund, which, as you all know, is an amazing not-for-profit that's been working in New York City for the last 30 years, has partnered with our team, Harbor Community, to operate an adult use retail cannabis dispensary. And the Doe Fund is working with our group, who is a group of experienced operators, on giving us the ability to operate in day-to-day within the dispensary. The Doe Fund will not be involved in day-to-day operations of the cannabis dispensary, but will only be the beneficiary of the majority of the profits, which will be used to fund the Doe Fund's programs. And as you all know, I'm sure already, that the Doe Fund for the last 30 years has led the charge against homelessness, recidivism, by providing economic opportunity, housing, career training, and supportive services to homeless and formerly incarcerated men. This partnership with Harbor will allow the Doe Fund to continue its programming and make an even greater impact supporting a population that has been disproportionately negatively impacted by the war on drugs. Can everyone see my screen?
It's just a blank white page. Oh, was there supposed to be an image?
There was.
Maybe stop share, share back, share again.
Okay. Let's see. Stop share. Let's try this. Very odd. It's still blank.
It's still blank.
Can you see this now?
No. You know what? You don't need it. We have your questionnaire with all of your beautiful pictures and your renderings in the chat. So tell us in your own words, walk us through it.
Sure. So Harbor is working with the Doe Fund to operate a dispensary. And as you already mentioned, we're a lifestyle cannabis brand that is committed to giving back through our partnership with the Doe Fund, while highlighting BIPOC and women-owned brands and providing clean, safe, and reliable products to our consumer. Harbor is a group of local New York entrepreneurs that came together because we strongly believe in the power of cannabis to give back and to create opportunities for people of color. We're a team of a diverse group of folks with backgrounds in finance, real estate development, economic development, and cannabis operations. And we strongly believe the revenues raised from the legalization of cannabis should support programs that benefit populations disproportionately negatively impacted by the war on drugs. We also believe that the legalization of cannabis should help to support local BIPOC and women-owned companies. And as I mentioned, we are a lifestyle retailer with high-end design accents to cater for the spectrum of users, personas from connoisseur to value seeker. We will be offering in-source store sales experience with pre-order and pickup options. Local delivery will be performed by up to 25 full employees per OCM regulations. And as you all know, the cannabis products that we will sell will be tested, vetted, and consistent in quality. We'll be sourcing products from well-known experienced brands from the West Coast, but also carrying many, many local brands. Paul, can I turn it over to you?
Of course. So our retail location is on the corner of Broadway and 13th Street. Our location has been approved by the Office of Cannabis Management, and it complies with all buffer zones for schools, religious institutions, and the 1,000-foot buffer between dispensaries. We're proposing the hours of operation. Mara, I know you've already touched on it. There's some recent guidance today to change it by the state from 8 a.m. to 2 a.m. So, you know, we're largely looking to be able to operate in accordance with what the state proposes. Age guidelines is 21 plus. We'll be using card readers to ensure people are of adequate age, and those readers can actually test for fake IDs as well. So that's how we're going to enforce that. The main entrance and exit for the dispensary will be on Broadway. It's the old Chase Bank. With regard to our retail operations, safety and security, much like the previous parties, we're going to have security guards at entrances and exits. We're going to have an ample waiting room inside the dispensary to minimize queuing outside. We will have a package of in-store security, including man traps, key lock doors, cameras, alarms, panic buttons, a secure vault, cash transportation with daily pickups to minimize the amount of cash on site. No cannabis products will be visible from outside the store in accordance with OCM guidelines. At nighttime, all inventory will be put back into secure vaults. Our in-store experience, we are a very highly experienced team with many years of cannabis experience. We're finalizing the hire of an experienced retail general manager with extensive experience in cannabis retail. We have a key focus on regulatory compliance. Our training program, we have a very thorough staff hiring, background checks, and training program. Of paramount importance to us is a responsible sale of product and consumer education. Only ambient music is to be played in the store. We'll have secure waste disposal and pickup for any discarded inventory product. It is an alcohol-free, drug-free, and smoke-free workplace on premise. Our team, is a highly experienced team with many years of experience in cannabis, including myself. One of our senior advisors is a former C-level executive from one of the early California MSOs. Our GM's got many years experience in the sector. So we bring a highly kind of experienced skill set to the Doe store. Our corporate partners, include our attorneys here, Foyst and Kulik. We're working with Sapphire Risk to ensure the safety of the store. We have secure banking. We're proposing to use Dutchie as our point of sale system. So we have all our corporate partners set up. Our design inspiration, let me see if I can share the screen. Is this visible now?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Paul.
So these are some of our design inspirations that we're looking to leverage. As you can see, it's a high-end type of store that we're seeking to replicate.
Do you mind going back to show the team as well?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So this is our kind of core senior management team. It's myself, Arena, Robert Cornegi, who's on the phone. Rob is one of our advisors, former New York City Council member, longtime relationship with the Doe Fund. Dave Votrin, C-level executive from a MSO out of California, Canna Royalty. This is our CFO and partner, Adam Semler. Jessica Schriftman, who's our creative, freelance creative director. These are our corporate partners that we're using, and we have kind of long relationships with. These are all the corporate relationships we bring to the team. So that's our presentation. We're open to questions, please.
Yeah, what is this about the West Coast?
Yeah, I'm happy to address that. There's a number of brands from outside of New York who have forged partnerships with New York State cultivators. So there are a number of cultivators who are working with brands from the West Coast to be able to provide those brands in New York State.
And just out of curiosity, why are you focused on those? Well, I guess it can't be product from out of state, so it's just the brand name.
Yeah, Paul, do you want to address that?
It's a combination of existing brands from outside the state who have partnered with New York licensed provisional cultivators to distribute their product under that brand name, and or some New York cultivators are choosing to create their own brands. So, at the end of the day, it's all New York cultivated, grown, distributed product.
I mean, yes, you have to use New York product, but I wonder, what message one might be sending, bringing West Coast brand names and uplifting that rather than really cultivating, pardon the pun, these New York brands and their name, and really uplifting that, since, New York cannabis is supposed to be for New York. That's just my personal 2 cents on that. William?
Thanks, Mar, and thanks, Arana and Paul, for your presentation. I really appreciate it. Just want to make sure I understand the setup correctly. So is this essentially set up as sort of, you have for-profit investors working with a nonprofit? Is that right? And can you talk a little bit about what the profit sharing there looks like? How much is going to the nonprofit itself versus the for-profit investors? And then related to that, I'm just a bit curious, how did you choose the partners that you had in terms of the investor side? Did you put out some sort of RFP? Did they reach out to you? I'm just a little more curious about that process. Thank you.
So the licensee is 51, it's controlled. The OCM requirements say a minimum of 51% has to be held by the Doe store. So a majority of the Doe funds or the Doe store's profits will go to the Doe Fund. The investors are a combination of Harbor and other external investors.
Sorry, I think you cut out at the end.
So the external investors are Harbor and other external investors.
And I guess just like how did Harbor and the Doe Fund get together? Was it?
So
I'm just curious about the background there.
Harbor is a group of entrepreneurs that have a long-standing history of working together, and we came together to form this new entity. We were in talks with the Doe Fund probably now for over a year, well in advance of the application and card regulations coming out, because we were committed from day one to partnering with a local not-for-profit that supports and provides services to populations that have been negatively impacted by the war on drugs. So from the very beginning, we were looking to forge a partnership with such a not-for-profit to be able to contribute a good chunk of our revenues to an organization. And then when the card application came out, we then pivoted and decided to continue to partner with the Doe Fund. But because of the core requirements, the Doe Fund is now obviously the majority owner but they're not going to be involved in day-to-day operations of the dispensary because we want them to focus on their mission and their work, and we're stepping in as the operator, and more than half of the profits will be redirected towards the not-for-profit.
I have a question. So it's the Doe Fund is not the 51% ownership. It's the Doe Store LLC. Yes?
No, the Doe Store LLC is the owners behind the Doe Store LLC is the Doe Fund and Harbor.
Okay.
And the Doe Fund.
But it's
is a
51% the Doe Fund is what you're saying, and 49% Harbor?
Correct.
So so the nonprofit.
The not-for-profit, 51%.
For-profit business.
Yeah.
Yes, the Doe Fund
Controls the Doe
yeah.
Store.
Correct.
Are you going to be using any of, what are they, the Men in Blue, the Doe Fund program participants as employees? Will they have an option? Will they have preference? Will they be able to work in the store?
We're certainly open to that arrangement, but not at this time. The Doe Fund has to, we're continuing to talk with them to see if we can make that as a possibility. If they have some individual graduates who are interested in working in the store, we're hoping to get there.
Because I was reading that the Doe Fund regularly and randomly drug tests their program participants, including for cannabis. Is that going to continue even though you may own a cannabis dispensary?
We're supportive of the Doe Fund's work and the work that they have been doing to support this population for over 30 plus years. I can't comment on their internal policies. All we want to be able to support the great work that they've done to date.
Does Robert want to address that?
Robert Cornegie?
Yeah, or anybody?
Are you able to promote him?
I am. Is he just the person on the phone?
Robert, can you raise your hand?
I think he's on the phone. Oh no, he's the other Paul, another one. There you go. I just tried to.
He is on as Paul as well, unfortunately, so it might be hard.
Yeah, Robert, will you raise your hand again? I thought I tried to promote you.
I would like to address the question, Mara, you mentioned earlier. You asked about the West Coast brands.
Yeah.
A lot of the cultivators in New York State are really struggling financially because they initially, as you know, they were hemp farmers for many, many years, and they lost a lot of money. And the state has given them an opportunity to be one of the first cannabis cultivators, to be the first cannabis cultivators in New York State. Many of them are incredibly drained of resources and don't have the means to be able to bring product to the market. The only way they're able to survive and thrive is by partnering with the West Coast brands. So I want to be very clear about that these New York State cultivators are not being hurt or harmed or taken advantage of by West Coast brands. West Coast brands are infusing them with capital, giving them access to resources, to a knowledge base that's very new on the East Coast. So we're partnering with those brands because they have a track record. They're able to deliver product consistently, high quality product that's safe and reliable. And we also are going to be sourcing brands primarily from New York State that are developed in state, BIPOC-owned brands, women-owned brands. But in order to have a balanced portfolio of products and consistent flow, we need to also be able to partner with local cultivators who, necessarily, unfortunately, had to partner with West Coast brands in order to survive and thrive and be able to grow their business.
Okay. Robert, I see you raising your hand. You can talk. You're a panelist.
Thank you, Mark. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfectly.
If you do me a favor and ask the question again, I was struggling to get activated.
So the first question was, will any of the Men in Blue be able to work in the store? And the second part of that was, will the Doe Fund continue random cannabis testing of their program participants whilst owning a cannabis dispensary, which is legal.
Right. So let me answer the first question. There's a differentiation between who you see on the street as our men in blue, which are actually in a trainee phase, and then our graduates. Employment is certainly open to our graduates who've gone through all the drug testing, who found themselves in a position now to get long-term sustainable housing. So there's a differentiation. Internally, prior to even the licensing, there was many conversations around how we pivot and shift how the organization pivots and shifts around a new emerging market and around new legislation that makes recreational marijuana legal. As it stands right now, if someone tests positive, they don't exit the program. They're offered services to help them in terms of treatment. So there is internally, the program directors are working to make sure that we can get to a place that doesn't penalize someone for using a substance that's now, very recently, legal. So there's not a definitive answer right now, because the goal always is to make sure that we can provide a safe environment for people who are using substances and have them be productive citizens. So, but there is internal talk, and it was before the licensing that this talk was whether or not what to do in the instance that this giant shift had taken place with recreational marijuana.
Thank you. Patricia.
Thank you, Mar. I have a few questions. Once again, I'm going back to that question I asked the first applicant, which is, how will you manage the crowd? Because you're going to be the second licensee in CB2. How will you manage traffic outside, on the sidewalk? Will there be private events? And there are 2 floors, and what is the square footage and how will they be used? And that's it.
So effective queue management is really important for us for quite a few reasons. So we really focus on the entire customer experience, including the line. So, in addition, having significant amounts of, consultation stations for customers once they're in the store with educated bud tenders, we'll also be offering interactive retail displays with a floating bud tender. So our goal is to engage them such that when they actually meet a bud tender, we can have an engaging and somewhat quick experience at the store. And sorry, that was what could you repeat your other questions?
Will there be private events?
We're not envisaging private events.
And then you have 2 floors. Will you be using both spaces?
No, we'll be using the ground level floor as our retail, and the basement will be used for storage.
And then will the customer have a retail experience, or will it be timed? Because
it won't be timed, but we envisage that they'll be guided by the bud tender who a highly trained bud tender who can ascertain what their consumption requirements are, their level of kind of familiarity with the plant, and we can direct them to an assortment of products expeditiously.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Where is this highly skilled and knowledgeable manager from?
We're in the midst of finalizing their engagement, but they're from a MSO.
But they are a New Yorker.
Yes.
We'll be happy to bring them back to introduce him.
Yes, thank you. This question is actually for Paul, and maybe Arena, is that how you say your name, can answer it too. This is actually a follow-up to Mar's question. You guys said that there's several highly skilled and experienced people that might be involved. So I'm just curious as to their experience. And as you know, this is a public consumption product. I just need to know what their experience and your experience has been in terms of being transparent and educating the public. as to, the same question I asked the other applicant as well, as to the content of the products you're selling. I see the list, but the brands are TBD and there's not a ton of information. So I'm just curious as to what these highly skilled and experienced managers have been able to do in terms of surrounding education and transparency. Thank you.
So a lot of the education requirements are set out by the OCM. And so it's in accordance with the OCM, but we're also going to have SOPs or standard operating procedures in the store, which are the basis of our training. With regard to our supply, we're actively out there interviewing, the vast supplier network of New York. Ultimately, a lot of the product it's all going to be tested before it hits the store, and every product is going to be in, secure packaging with testing labels on there and adequate warnings, such that we can actually ascertain the level of THC and other cannabinoids. And that, in conjunction with the bud tender experience, who has gone through heavy training with us, will seek to promote, the customer education. There's also a thought that on departure, we're going to have palm cards which talk about the responsible consumption of cannabis.
Okay, I'm asking about the experiences though. Like, what have they done in the past to, right? Like, I mean, from what it sounds like, these are people who have had experience with retail, right? So is that true, or they don't have experience with retail?
No, we have experience with cannabis retail, and so yeah.
So what have you guys done? Give me an example, please. That'd be great. Thank you.
So I think a very good example is looking at the data analytics to actually understand repeat buyers, and to try to identify diversion. So, not dissimilar from the opioid epidemic, when you see people buying at such high rates where it's not humanly possible for someone to consume. That's a red flag, and that you should not be selling to that person because they're obviously diverting the product on. So that's just one example of a data analytic where you look at your customer profile and their consumption pattern to actually ascertain whether it's feasible and responsible to sell to that person.
Yeah, so something like the palm cards, I mean, I like that idea, and I'm just kind of curious, but thank you for that.
Thank you. Dr. Smith?
Thank you, Mar. First of all, I'd like to just say hello to Robert Carnegie. Good to see you. Happy to know that you're involved in this, and I think it lends a great deal of credibility. Thank you for Arena and for you, Paul, for your presentation. I thought I heard you say, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that the establishment will be open to 2 a.m. every day.
So the state released guidance in the last day or so where they suggested that the opening hours can extend to 2 a.m. So, so what we haven't finalized what our hours are, but we're asking just to allow us to operate in accordance with what the state is proposing.
That's pretty well.
Well, so Dr. Smith,
I'm sorry.
I want to actually share some. So under the municipality guidelines, like what we can do and what we can't do, I'm going to put it in the chat here. Municipalities shall not restrict operations to less than 70 hours a week, provided, however, this provision shall not be construed as removing the licensee's discretion to operate for less hours of operation. So what that means is, if we don't like over 70 hours, we can say so. We can tell the OCM in our resolution that this is not what we want if we feel that the hours are too much. If it's over 72 hours, right now they are asking for 112 hours a week. And my question is, 16 hours is a long day. How are you going to, rotate staff? Are you going to have 2 shifts come in, or how's that going to work?
Yeah, but we would need to have, various shifts, various shifts to ensure that people are working in compliance with, city and state law.
And can I ask, are you associated with the Harbor Group of, California and Massachusetts?
No.
No, that's not you guys?
That is not us. No, we're a kind of new company, you know.
Do you have interest in any other cannabis operations
No.
anywhere else in the country or the world?
No.
So what made you want to do this?
I can speak to that as well. I mean, I think we have a very diverse team, many of which do have substantive cannabis operations experience. So Paul helped to establish a dispensary in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. He was the CFO of that company. Dave Votrin, who's our consultant from the West Coast, helped to build from the ground up at least 3 cannabis retail companies. Myself, my background is in politics in New York State. So I worked on economic development policy, on housing policy, transportation policy, and arts policy for our previous governor, for David Patterson, for many years, and worked at the agency level as well. And for me, I view cannabis and the legalization of cannabis as a platform to give opportunities to burgeoning entrepreneurs in New York State, and also to give back to not-for-profits who are doing meaningful work to reverse the harm that the war on drugs have done in communities of color. So we all feel the same way. We're all committed to giving back to our community in a very meaningful way. We all are aligned in that regard. And we view this opportunity as not only an opportunity to do well on the business side, but also to contribute back and to support young entrepreneurs in this state, specifically BIPOC and women-owned companies.
Tricia?
Well, it sounds like you're gonna have a lot of security if you're gonna have those long hours. Will you have someone there 24 hours a day watching the site? That's one. And the second is, will you be opening other dispensaries?
So, yeah. So at a minimum, for every hour that the store is open, we'll definitely have full security. And then post hours, we may have a reduced staff of security just to ensure the security of the establishment. At this stage, so technically every licensee is able to have up to 3 licenses. So that's an option. Although our sole focus right now is on, opening and operating and doing well in this one dispensary.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we got a bunch of questions, but we got a really long one. Goodness, wow, okay. All right. I'm curious about the relationship between an owner landlord at 835 Broadway and the applicant, as well as any involvement of that particular owner in the cannabis industry. Various apparent connections are found online, some outlined below. Mark Mermel, is he one of your partners?
No, I don't know who that is.
He is an owner of General Cannabis Corp. And an owner of the building you're about to move into.
The owner of the building.
Not to our knowledge. He is no.
That's what it's.
The landlord for the space that we are looking to rent is Premier Equities.
Okay. This says it's MDM 835 Broadway, Mermel Associates PLCC, 1 Hollow Lane, Lake Success. I don't know. And
I don't know
then
anything about that.
No, nor do we.
All right, we should probably look into that. Oil and gas mapping business. This is like a lot. I know what's happening right now. Colorado, cannabis company, Mile High Protection Services. Do you know what that is?
No.
Bazinga? No. Trees in Portland? None of these, you're not associated with any of them?
No. All over, I mean, we're happy to share whatever information you like.
75 Farm. It's interesting that that in current or former owner of that building had so many cannabis businesses across the state. Interesting. Coincidence, I guess. All right, I'll go to the other questions. Why did you decide to have more California or our state brand in your store when brands currently are not equitable and mostly not Black or brown? Why not support New York brands instead of New York State brands? Especially since the focus, I'm getting more questions and it kicks up every time somebody puts a new one in, especially since the focus said it was on BIPOC women brands.
We will be sourcing the majority of our products from brand new New York State brands. We will also probably be we will have a handful of brands from the West Coast, but of the New York State brands, a large percentage will also be brands that are owned by BIPOC and women-owned brands. So we'll be offering an assortment with the majority of the brands and the products that we will be sourcing for the retail establishment will be from New York.
Okay. Can you clarify the difference between the Doe Fund and the Doe LLC?
So the Doe Store LLC is the entity that Doe Fund set up to be the licensed entity for this license.
Okay. There's a question about third-party security company. Yes, they do. It is a bonded security company. We have all that information. Theft is a massive problem with cannabis, particularly within the dispensaries themselves. So like the cannabis itself, the security plan is highly regulated by the OCM. So you're not going to see, there's not going to be a lot of opportunity for theft, the way things are stored and the security requirements just across the board, much like the signage. You're not going to see a lot of crazy sign. You're not going to see any crazy signage because OCM asks for very specific, very, subdued, unobtrusive signage. So my recommendation to anybody who has questions about security or really operations, that can you drop the guidance for dispensaries form, Cheryl, please? Look at that form, and when you have time, read the regs, which are almost 300 pages, but they will tell you everything that you want to know. Carter.
Yeah, I'm trying to turn on my video, which I think we're allowed to do, right? For board members. It's not letting me.
Let me.
Okay, yeah. Anybody who speaks pursuant to the open meetings law should be on video. The questions that I have are, do you have a position again on, like I asked before, on illegal dispensaries? The 6th precinct currently has received complaints of 46 illegal stores in the 6th precinct on top of the 51 in the 9th precinct for dispensaries. So that's question 1. Question 2 is about events or any kind of openings on any kind of regular basis. Like Dr. Smith, the extensive hours of operation, I think, are a big community concern. So I'm just hoping that you guys are responsive to the community. And will there be an employee of the nonprofit on site at all times? I'm just sort of confused as to who's actually operating the store or the relationship with the investors, et cetera. The pop-up signage that's shown in the pictures in your materials aren't compliant with New York City regulations. I'm just wondering if you'll comply with the New York City sidewalk signage rules so that sidewalks, especially sidewalks in busy areas like yours on Broadway, aren't blocked. And those are my questions. Thanks.
I can start with the sign question. I'm just going backwards. Certainly the signage will comply with all DOB requirements. Those were just proposed images. We have not yet designed the signage for the pop-up or for the permanent signage as of yet.
The events, we're not planning to have, extraordinary events. We just say consumer store. You had a question on the illegal stores. Look, similar to the last group here, we consider them illegal stores. What other questions did you have?
There will not be a Doe Fund graduate or employee on site at all times.
Yeah, meaning, are there employees of the nonprofit actually operating the store or in the store? Not necessarily the Doe Fund, but the licensee is a nonprofit.
The licensee is for profits.
It is for profit. So
yeah,
but
I
it's,
guess
it's controlled by the Doe Fund. So the Doe Fund have sole
Right.
control over the licensee.
so they're not going to have anybody on the premise.
Well, they've hired and they've partnered with us, and we are hiring people, competent, trained people to be on site to run the store for them.
Okay, so they don't actually have a representative on site at all times. Okay.
no.
And then let me just look into things. So the reason I ask about dispensaries is I'm just, there's so many in the area, and obviously your partnership's important, and your success is important in how that's done. And obviously that's a very great area. And then just the hours. I mean, I know that's a big community concern. So just raising that. Thanks.
Yeah, I guess one other thing on the illicit stores is, we completely seek to differentiate ourselves from them from a, personal safety, cleanliness of the product. There's a recent New York Times article saying they did a mass test of cannabis, purchased from illegal stores, and they were found to have, pesticide, solvents, other kind of untoward things in there. So I think the, average consumer can feel comfortable that when they come into a licensed store, the product has been tested, it's safe for consumption, which is very important. And it comes in child-proof packaging, and other such, elements that the state's been working very hard on.
Yeah, I would say that with regard to the Doe Fund, we are serving as a representative on site, and there will always be someone from Harbor and our team on site. We created this structure because cannabis, as you know, is still illegal federally. So there is some question whether a 501c3 could actually operate. So we were very careful in that regard. And as I mentioned, the Doe Fund does amazing work on the ground. We wanted their efforts to be focused on that work that they do on the ground with the community that they serve.
Yeah, I was going to say, just follow the importance of the nonprofit is because this is new to everybody. And when people hear the nonprofit aspect of the card licensees, you're hearing a lot of questions because of the structure doesn't meet what people think. Right. And it doesn't mean that it's not legal. And so the more clarity we have on that, the better discussion we have. And as we all learn about that. And so this is just because it's a surprise when people hear it, not because there's an issue. It's just not what people have read and understood from all of the discussions and rollout of the card licenses. I just wanted to make that clear. It's misunderstanding or not understanding. So I don't mean to have that come across the same way. It's just very confusing.
It is.
Mark,
yeah.
Mark, can you still hear me?
Yes, and I can see you now too.
Yeah, thanks. I figured that out without the help of my kids, by the way, just for the record. I wanted to just make a note. You mentioned earlier, and it seemed to be a point of contention about the partnership with brands from California. One of the very sad things that is happening with the gray market and all of the stores that you've mentioned is they're getting product unregulated from all over the world. And in order to be competitive, what legal stores are doing is working with, in the confines of the state, even the growers in the state are trying to produce the best products and are getting partnerships from out of state and growing here. So it doesn't mean that we or anyone is considering getting products outside of what the state allows or slighting our growers here in the state. But what the growers here in the state are actually doing is partnering with these high quality, long-term growth and cultivators from other places and forming partnerships. So that's what it meant, not us operating outside of what the criteria and or regs state about buying in state. We're looking at what's happening with growers and cultivators here who are establishing these partnerships to be able to produce products that are safe, that are top quality, that are on par with the gray market. That the competition in the gray market is actually horrible. And what they're doing is making it very difficult for state operators who in some instances are just formerly hemp operators and who are now transitioned to cannabis and or hemp. Those growth and cultivators, whether they be minority owned or whether they be long-term operators, are also establishing partnerships. And we were referencing those partnerships that are being established by the growers that are here, not operating outside of what the criteria was. I just want to be as clear as I could on that.
Thank you, Robert. So is that your hand, Patricia? It is.
Yes.
So one last question from the forum, and then we'll go to public testimony. Are you willing to work with New York State legacy brands to develop them into legal brands? Do they have anyone working in sales that has ever sold cannabis?
Well, we are more than willing to work with legacy brands, but of course the brands have to be licensed by New York State in order for us to procure product from them. And we're certainly happy to support whatever we can in every way we can through trainings or mentorship, various different educational programming to support those legacy brands from securing a license.
Patricia, do you have another question?
Yeah, I just need clarification on that, the proposed hours of operation. On your application, you wrote 8 a.m. to 12 a.m. 7 days a week. But you said in your presentation that you could stay as open until 2 with a new guideline. I was just asking if you're gonna stay open until 2, if you wouldn't mind coming back to the committee to request those hours.
I mean, I personally, I'm like, do you need eight? Do you need all that time? I mean, it's 100 and whatever. It feels like a lot to me. I mean, are you guys just reserving that time, or do you plan to actually operate all 16 hours a day? Because
we're just reserving that time. So
yeah, you can't do that. You have to tell us when you're going to be operating now.
Well, we're not,
like a lot. And if you want to change it, then you come back and ask for more hours, is kind of the way it works for us and most of the boards in New York City. So we need your actual hours of operation when you open before the end of the month.
That's fine. I think for now, what we submitted 8 to 12 is more than ample. We were just responding to the change in regulations that the OCN put out. But should we find a need to actually extend past that, we will come back to you definitely.
Okay, so you will be open that entire time, is what you're saying, because those are selling hours.
Yes.
So you're going to open your doors to the public at 8 a.m. and they will not be closed to the public until 12 a.m. is what you're telling us right now.
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay, and so, okay. And you're going to be open the whole day from 8 a.m. until 12 a.m. every day of the week.
Yes.
And if that doesn't work out for you and you want to reduce your hours, you're going to come back, right, and tell us, hey, we want to reduce our hours, or we want more hours, or whatever it is.
Unfortunately, Mar, the gray market is operating 24 hours a day, unimpeded by. I mean, so it makes it a little bit difficult to do business in a city where, if you could imagine, if it was, I don't know, clothing, and one store could operate 8 hours more than another store selling similar products, it would be incredibly difficult. So I'm saying 8 to 12, yes, but it's difficult when you're potentially operating against who is our true competition, which is the gray market, who's operating 24 hours a day with no community board approval or no regulation from the state. And that's unfortunately what we face. Those seem like a lot of hours, but compared to 24, it's not.
Thank you. We have a question from Pete Davies. Pete.
Hi, yeah, thank you. Back to the question of Mr. Marmel, the landlord. He's listed on his company is listed on your questionnaire under Premier Equities, MDM 835 Broadway. That's Mr. Marmel's company. So that's why there was curiosity, having found various connections apparently with Mr. Marmel and various SEC filing for the cannabis company and others. So, you know, this is all new to you. This is new to the community. It's new to folks who live here. And so we're just trying to figure out what this world is. And so anyway, you guys put the name on your questionnaire as the owner of the building where you're going to be doing business. And I know, anyway, that's clarifying what y'all didn't seem to understand about one of the members of Premier Equities. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. Catherine?
Hi, a few questions and comments. I thought that the proposed regulations talked about 70 hours of operation for licensees, but I'll leave that where it is. The other question is, we heard from the other applicant about the expectation of cash sales. Do you expect this to be debit card only and cash sales? But the main question I have is the same one as before. Are you delivering online? What will be your delivery area? Is it going to be, can you buy it via app? Can you order online ahead? Pickup and delivery? I want to hear about your delivery plan. Thank you.
So, sorry, can I answer?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So we will sell in-store via shopping experience. Customers can purchase online, then come to the store to pick up, and or we can deliver to customers. The maximum number of delivery people we can have under the New York OCM law is up to 25 full-time employees. You know, it's kind of new to us. We're going to, you know, see what type of demand there is for delivery. And we'll kind of adapt to see, you know, what geographic, you know, landmarks or positions that we'll deliver to. As it relates to payment, you know, cash, cashless, we can no longer do cashless ATM, but it'll be cash, debit card, and also ACH via certain like Divi Pay, sorry, Dutchy Pay.
Good, Catherine?
Yeah, oh, you can hear me. The last comment I was making is I'm looking for this label that says grown in New York, because cannabis grown locally has the best potential to be controlled in terms of quality of product. And to me, that's a brand. So I wanted to know, and I still want to know, are cultivators the same as processors? Are those completely different businesses? But this idea that locavore, locally grown product is what is coming through these dispensaries is another part of economic development for the region. So I wanted to hear more about that. Thank you. And that's it.
Thank you, Catherine. Pete, do you have another comment?
No, I do not.
Okay.
I'll take my hand down.
All right, let me just check the comment form. Of course, there are more. All right, let's see. Brands can have been created in New York State legal, i.e. CBD brands, but why is your company, Hemp Farmers, starting with work with out-of-state California brands first? Those other brands will sell the same flower as New York brand. Why not focus on local business? That's question one. Question two is, I'm not clear on how the Doe store plans to partner with West Coast Cali brands. Are these brands having their strains cultivated in New York, private labeled by a processor, using someone else's product, or are they talking about current hemp cultivators who may be doing limited processing?
Paul, do you want to answer this? Sorry.
Yeah, it's 100% of the product we purchase will be grown, processed in New York, period. We're looking to get the best product, the safest product, the kind of best shelf life for our customers. And so in conducting our interviews, we don't have a bias. We're not trying to have a bias of getting West Coast brands. We're just trying to find the best product. We may end up having some West Coast brands. That's not our goal. That's not, what we're seeking to, purchase from for our supply chain. So I think that comment has been taken a little bit out of context for, what our focus is.
We literally over the last 2 months, Paul and I, Arena, have run all over the state of New York, visiting farms, meeting with farmers, some of them farmers of color. We were just, I won't mention, we were just in a place, Paul and I, 2 days ago, meeting with a very good potential for a source. So that's the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is to make sure that we are represented as a state up and down the vertical supply chain, and not just in dispensaries, but to make sure that we're in growth and cultivation, we're in delivery, we're in packaging, we're in extraction, everything. So I don't know how it got misrepresented on the call, but the reality is, yes, 100% of the flower will be from New York State. Literally, I have been running around with everybody on this call, trying to find and source the best products in the state of New York, from the top of the state all the way to the bottom. I can show you my mileage to demonstrate the commitment we have to making sure that, literally, not making phone calls, literally going to farms, seeing and talking to farmers, seeing what the processing will be, seeing what the turnover will be, seeing what the availability will be, making sure it's a premier product. I've learned more about lights and growth and pesticides than I really would have needed to know. But in an effort to make sure that we can deliver the best product from the state, we've been committed to doing that. So I don't know how I don't know what happened that didn't resonate.
Well, I think somebody said California, and maybe that's not something you want to say.
I think I learned more. I think I learned a valuable lesson.
that was maybe a mistake. I don't know. Yeah. So are there any other questions? Seeing none, I want to thank you all for coming and your wonderful presentation. And you're welcome to stay and observe our business session. We may refer back and ask you a question, but you will be bumped down to attendees at this time.
Well, before you bump me, I just want to say thank you, Dr. Smith. It's always a pleasure to see you as well.
Thank you. Looking forward to seeing you.
Of course.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh, there we go. Is everybody gone? Sorry. Last one. All right. So let's talk about Housing Works first. And I will pull up their specs again. So Nope, that's the wrong one. Here it is. Did anybody, were there any like sticking points for anybody with Housing Works? Or anything that wasn't clear? No. So again, they're going to be selling flower, pre-roll, tinctures, concentrates, edibles. They didn't give us a price list, but you know, they did say that their pricing would be not prohibitive, which is what we want. I mean, they run thrift stores, so I don't think that they're going to charge exorbitant prices. Let's see. It is a mixed use building, but the tenants go in at One Astor Place and they'll be using literally the corner of 8th Street and Broadway for their entrance. And it's one small door for deliveries. Their deliveries are never going to be bigger than a van, maybe, because the nature of cannabis product is that it's tiny, it's not big. So, and they can't have that much on site at a time. Carter?
Yeah, I'm just not clear what the board is commenting on for these applications and what is something that they will take into account, what is just de facto, and particularly for the card licenses, you know, which I think are even a little more different given the status of how they've been reviewed. So I just, you know, I think that's important so that we all understand what we can, well, I mean, we can comment on anything, but what are they looking for on the
Here,
comments?
I'm gonna actually put the reg up right now.
Sure.
Just give me 1 second to pull it up. It's time, place, and manner. So. Hold on, 116. Oh, adult use, there it is. Manner, time, place, and manner. Sorry, you're making me sift through this 282 page. Regulations.
It's just important for everybody to know.
Yeah, I mean, the committee knows, I sent them all of this. Here it is. All right. Authorizations to municipality rulemaking. And you know what, why don't I share screen so you can see this? All municipalities and counties are hereby preempted from adopting any law, rule, ordinance, regulation, or prohibition pertaining to the registration, licensing, permitting, or operation of registered organizations, adult use cannabis businesses, or cannabinoid hemp businesses. Provided, however, such municipality may enact local laws and regulations governing the time, place, and manner of the operation of licensed adult use cannabis retail dispensaries and or on-site consumption sites, provided that such law or regulation shall not make the operation of such licensed retail dispensary or on-site consumption site unreasonably impractical as determined by the board. And when they say board, they mean CCB, the Cannabis Control Board. To the extent the following is not unreasonably impractical, the board, CCB, authorizes municipalities to pass local laws and regulations governing the time, place, and manner, which shall mean and apply to the following activities. Hours of operation for adult use retail dispensary during which cannabis products can be sold at retail, right? So that's very specifically the selling hours that we're talking about. So there's a discrepancy. Shall not be allowed to operate from 2 until 8, between 2 a.m. and 8 a.m. The actual guidance document says midnight right now. I actually flagged that for OCM. They didn't realize that they had, now I realized it was 3 different documents with different times on them, but chances are it is going to be expanded to 2 a.m. Unless given express written permission by such municipality or the municipality passes a local ordinance authorizing it to operate beyond such hours. So I take that to mean we only have to give them 70 hours. Our first dispensary is asking for 72 hours eventually, but I think rather than have them come back, I wouldn't mind giving them 72 upfront. That's my personal thought. And our second one wants 112 hours, which sounds crazy to me. But, you know, when pressed. Anyway, let's see. We shall not restrict operations. I put this in the chat 4 times already. To less than 70 hours, provided, however, this provision should not be construed as removing the license discretion to operate for less than that time. So if they wanted less than 70, that would be fine. But we're not obligated to advise for more than 70. And so that's about it. Now we're going into on-site consumption. Is that clearer for everybody now?
It is clear, but one of the things I point out in the regulations, community boards, while we act as the notice entity for the municipality, the community board is not a lawmaking or the municipality. So the hours of, I'm just point this out because this is a gray area, as opposed to the hours would need to be made a condition of operation by OCM, and not, we can't do that. But, you know, the city could pass those laws, but they obviously haven't. But I just point that out as a discrepancy. So these are recommendations. And so if we do put in any suggestions, we should make sure that they're, you know, supported with reasons, particularly as we start off with these first 2 licenses. So it's an area which where community boards are seen as one entity during one part of the process, but we're not legally an entity in the law for the other parts of the process. And so it's advisory.
I mean, we're advisory. We're still advisory. I mean, I've been stressing that we're advisory. We can't make any rules. What we can do, and since literally we are the first, these are the first 2 dispensaries, theoretically, that will open. Honestly, whether we deny them or not, or approve them, those dispensaries are opening before the end of the year. Sorry, that's just a fact.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's disputing that. It's just, what are we giving input on?
So, I mean, for me, I guess at this point, what we are doing is we are advising them on what our desire for these businesses in our community is, as we always do. And we hope to hold them to that. And we hope that the OCM listens to us and listens to our concerns and takes them very seriously. You know, it's new to everybody, but we'll do what we do, which is uplift the best interest of the district. You know, and they'll take what they want and leave what they don't. And, you know, if it doesn't work out, we go back and we make a stink. And absolutely, Carter, I think you're right. We do need to do some sort of letter, or, well, I guess a letter at this point, because it's too late to do a resolution, where we talk about these things and we submit them. The comment period's up on the 14th for the regs. So this is something that maybe we want them to include. And we do what we can do, right, Carter? Yeah. So to that, let's talk about Housing Works. How does everybody feel about it? Thoughts?
I don't have a problem. I like their mission statement. Should I be raising my hand? I'm sorry.
No, go for it. Go crazy.
I would vote yes. I like their presentation. They answered my questions. And their hours are reasonable.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Juan? Oh.
Sorry, I almost fell. I like them a lot. I guess I would have a couple questions, see how, because I believe they're planning hopefully opening 2 more, so in Manhattan. So I'm just hoping to like maybe know if there's plans to expand even more than that, and what the purpose of that expansion would be.
So under the law, when you get a license, that license allows you 3 total dispensaries. So anybody who's getting one is doing that. So, I mean, it follows. You know, I'll tell you something. I looked at the financials for Housing Works, and in 2015, they were bringing in $36 million, $38 million, actually, I think. And last year, they only brought in 11. They need to be able to fund their programming, and their programming is really good for justice involved people, for people living with AIDS and HIV, and people living, you know, experiencing homelessness. They do great work. They are all over the community. I have a Housing Works thrift shop down the street from my house. It's right next to the 6th precinct. There's the one on 18th Street. I shop there all the time. Like, this is a community institution, and it is beloved. So I feel personally good about this. I know because it's Housing Works, they're not going to come in and, you know, have a rave party in the cannabis dispensary. I don't know. It's not going to be wild and crazy, in my opinion. William?
Yeah, sorry, I don't know if Christina, was she from Housing Works? Did she want to respond to a question? I don't know if I should let her go before me.
Yeah, she can if she wants.
Oh, hi. Sorry. I kind of changed into my pajamas, so I'm not going to go on camera at this point. It's been a long day for me. But to answer your question, William, under law, we can't open more than 3 dispensaries. And each time we open a dispensary, it has to be under a totally new license application with the OCM. I'm not with Housing Works. I'm just a longtime fan and their counsel helping them out on this call this evening. Does that help?
Mars, okay.
Yeah, thank
Mars,
you.
should I go
Yeah, go.
now? Yeah. No, I think it's interesting. I think we saw here in our first meeting, it's really 2 different models of applicants, right? We have Housing Works, which is 100% a nonprofit owned store. They're not operating at such hours as to maximize their profits. They're here as a service to the community. And these 2 stores are going to be just a few blocks away on Broadway, right? So I'm curious to see what the contrast looks like, you know, once they're both open. So I just thought that it was an interesting contrast to the first meeting, and I think certainly for Housing Works, it's kind of, I think, a model of what this is intended to look like at the start. So I'm supportive.
Thank you, William. I totally agree with you. I mean, Housing Works seems like this is what it was supposed to be. The other one, I don't know. Dr. Smith?
First, I'm not a member of the committee, so my question is, am I to ask a question at this point? Make a
Dr. Smith,
contributor?
you can do whatever you want in any.
Oh, how very kind of you. Thank you. So I'm very familiar with Housing Works, and I do agree totally with you, Amar. They have been around for a very long time, and they were actually the first to really look at the people who were affected by AIDS and of course drugs, and people who were also involved in the justice system too. But I can't vote for it, but if I'm supportive of it, if that means anything, as a member of the board.
Thank you, Dr. Smith.
So yeah, thank you for saying that, William. It's really truly a stark contrast between the 2. I like that Housing Works was able to answer my questions and most of our questions. Sorry, I think that's all. So the other thing I wanted to say was, yes, coming here my main concerns are equity, because we know what happened in the other states that have legalized cannabis. I want to make sure that, people who are, just as involved and, otherwise marginalized peoples will benefit at some point, right? So I thought that Housing Works sounds like they're definitely on track for that. And then lastly, my concerns for safety in terms of consumption, because this is a public facing space. As we know, there are children, people under 21, so I'm really curious to see how they're gonna, sort of as the first to market, how they're gonna address those issues. I actually have been doing some research on what Colorado and California have done, so I just want all of us also to consider that too. I'm sure there's gonna be many more people and applicants. So how are we going to make sure that these commercial spaces are going to sort of take that responsibility, right? Like, responsible selling, or, whatever you want to call it, ethical, advertising, so that's really important. I have.
Well, the advertising is written into the regs.
Yes.
There are very strict rules on that. And the product itself is also highly regulated and tested. So I can't do anything about that. I don't know what we could uplift beyond the really detailed. I mean, I sent it to you earlier today, the percentages for each different kind of product, and like it's a whole thing. I'm gonna personally leave that to OCM because I trust them to do that and make sure that the product is safe. I really, Carter.
I was just going to say, Housing Works, it's awesome that they're the first candidate to come to us, because we know who Housing Works is and we know the type of stores they run. You can walk into their bookstore, into their thrift stores, which are in our community and all throughout New York. You can see the diversity of their staff. You can see their mission, their materials, everything. And as a result, I think there's a high level of confidence that they're going to run a very good store that's very taking into account the concerns of the community at all phases, from opening, while they're open, all those aspects, and that they will address issues as they come up. We know that to be the case because they've already done it. And so I think the first application is not much of a challenge. I think it's going to be every subsequent application that we have going forward. And I just want to say that because it's very hard to discuss other applications when you have such a great candidate who comes first. And so I just wanted to say that because I think that's very important. And, I'm just very happy that they're the first ones to come to us and that we heard them first.
I think we all share that. Am I mistaken? Are we all feeling that way? Yeah. And my suggestion is to not, do the original 56 hours, just offer them the full time ahead of time, 52 to 72 hours. Can we do that actually? Or do they have to operate? We say 56 hours and then expand to the 72. We can write that. We can do that in our resolution. We can do whatever we want. Carter.
I think the importance is if they do less, right? And they volunteered initially to do less, I think that it should just be written with exactly what they said, what they want to do now and in the future, because I'm not sure we're in a role of doing anything except reacting to those. We're not in a role of proposing.
So we're just saying yes to eventually over 72, which is fine. I think that's okay. All right, so let's vote. I'll go like this. Anthony.
Yes.
Patricia.
Yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
Vaughn.
Yes.
William.
Yes.
And me. It is unanimous. Housing Works is approved. Look at that. We just made history, you guys. All right. Moving on to the Doe store. Thoughts? No, not faces. Thoughts?
I brought up that. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't raise my hand.
I'm going to skip you now, Carter.
Go ahead, Patricia.
I'm sorry. Well, I asked them about the hours. If they're going to increase it to 2, I want them to come back. There are so many. The model of the profit to nonprofit, the fact that they don't have any employees from the Doe Fund, working there is problematic, but those are things that came up for me. And the fact that the presenter said California was problematic, but they clarified that. So, I mean, the fact that they have a provisional license, I mean, who's going to hold them to what? Is the OCM going to hold them to what they say? Is they're going to uphold and uplift New York growers and sell New York?
They're provisionally licensed, right? There's a second half to their license.
Okay.
I don't know if it'll make a difference. I mean, if a licensee, a provisional licensee were to come to us and we kick it back to the OCM, with a path, in the words of Bob Eli, with a path, and let them know, like, this is what doesn't sit right with this community. This is what we don't like that you plan to do. And this is how we think you could really do better, maybe just change some things in your business model. My thing is, I've been doing this work, you all know, for the last year plus. I'm completely immersed in the cannabis community in New York. This is exactly, it feels like this is exactly what it was not supposed to be. This feels MSO. This feels predatory almost, big financiers coming in and finding a nonprofit or a social equity applicant to hitch their wagon to. It just feels so wrong on so many levels. And then the exorbitant hours are insane. Like, and it felt like they didn't even want those hours, but it was a, they just wanted the option to kind of do whatever they wanted to do. And that was a red flag for me, asking for those hours in the first place. Like, we just want freedom. I mean, be free, but be a good neighbor too. Carter, again?
Yeah, just to echo what you're saying, I mean, they're approved, and everything they described is within the bounds of what's legal, it seems. But exactly right, it's against the spirit of everything. Even bringing in other plants to grow here, which they called brands, but that's not unusual, in any of the agricultural industry. But this goes against the spirit or intent of so much of what we all know, and that's why I raised it, during the meeting with them. And I think we need to mention that, because that's a big part of what the regulations were supposed to address, and also why there's such widespread support for the entire structure and the process of legalization and the rollout, right, of the different licenses. And I it's uncomfortable, but because they're approved on the first part, that's just a comment, right? It's not something that's going to change anything. However, I do think that because we're not necessarily familiar with the operators, et cetera, and that we can comment on time, I think the place presumably is approved, as far as the extent of the rules, but we should mention the proximity to Union Square Park and our concerns there. I'm not sure what the hours are for Union Square Park, but that's obviously, for later night sales or leading to consumption more immediately, most likely, than other times. I mean, that's maybe I'm wrong, but that's just, I don't think that's unreasonable to conclude that some of it will be. So place is a concern with that in mind, which ties into the hours. And then the manner is just, I mentioned just they had presented A-frame signage that was placed out in the street. That's something that's there's specific rules for that, but these are all tied together. They create a sort of a different picture where there's concern about the hours. And while they're legal, that's a part of the connection with the community being involved. And I just throw it out though, is the first licensees and the card licenses are supposed to have an advantage as a result of being approved. They do want to compete with everybody. So it's a complicated response because they do want to participate. But at the same time, we have our own concerns as a community. So I put that out there because it's a balance that, again, going forward, this is going to be the question. And if we equate this to liquor stores and their prevalence in our community and meeting the needs of our community, we see them all have different hours. So the expectation of full use of the hours is not, it doesn't have to be, meaning that our recommendation, I think, could carry some weight if the time is something that we comment on, for this application, since we're given the opportunity to comment on those aspects.
I would also like to point out, I being able to compete, but the Doe Fund is like a $67 million a year organization. So I don't want to count anybody's money, but it feels like they might have the leeway, and certainly with these investors, they're for 49% partner group, that they would have the leeway to maybe put together something that felt honorable.
I agree. That's why I bring it up, because I think that it's not easy to write these, as well, anybody who sat down and tried to write complicated resolutions. But I think that that's what you need to convey to OCM for this particular application for them to take under advisement.
So well, let's let everybody speak. Janine?
To address sort of the hours tied to the mission and then just compare the two applicants. Housing Works talked about, that, the mayor said he wasn't going to enforce the illegal cannabis until the legal stores opened up. And obviously we all know that that's going to be a work in progress. It's not going to suddenly disappear overnight. And then the second applicant used that as a rationalization that's their competition. And so I'm a little, it's just a different approach to the same problem, is that, we're going to work with the city, or we just need to be open all the time because our competition is 24/7. And I'm not so convinced that if somebody's looking for, an off-market bargain, they're not necessarily going to go to this store and pay a little bit more, or whatever the case may be. And I'm just going to say, in comparison, I would like to see some more employees of the Doe Fund working there. There was some comment of appropriately trained, I'd have to go back to the transcript, but appropriately trained or employees, which did not sound like it was any of their employees, the organization's current employees. And so I would like to get something in there about the hours, that this is a new model, and also about having an organization that has, if they're going to be a not-for-profit that's tied to it, obviously, that they have some of their employees in there. The same way Housing Works has their employees at their stores.
Wonderful. Thank you, Janine. Cheryl?
Yeah, it's just a comment about, I couldn't tell when they said California, West Coast, whether they just kind of missed the point altogether, or it was, I don't know, and then until people sort of in the chat and questions really asked them about it, and I couldn't tell if it's like a backpedaling or what's happening there, but it's not clear to me that the focus is on, sort of in-state people, who have been here for a while. So that's just my comment and confusion, I guess.
William?
I'm curious, Mark, maybe we don't know, but do we have a sense as to kind of what the pipeline looks like? Like, going forward, are there going to be more applications that look like this kind of JV structure? And the reason I ask is I do feel like Housing Works is, they operate a number of retail stores. They're sort of uniquely qualified as a nonprofit to sort of pivot into, setting up a dispensary. There might be other nonprofits such as the Doe Fund that, while they're large, it isn't really within the bounds of what they're doing. And so they may feel it's easier logistically to sort of partner with someone else. They're still going to see the proceeds, but they don't have to put in place this entire sort of retail infrastructure. So I'm just curious if that's, that's one thing I was thinking about. So I'm wondering if that's going to be kind of the model that we see going forward. Rather, I do feel even for certain large nonprofits, it's very tough for them to develop all of this in-house. So just something I was thinking about.
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you for pointing out the fact that Housing Works does run retail. Like, it's literally what they do, and it's how they fund their programs. I mean, this is kind of perfect. This perfect for them, and they are perfect for it. And yes, this VC model worries me, because while they don't have the retail experience, they have the money to hire whoever, the best experts, get their hands on the best product. And then how does a Housing Works compete with that? And again, to what Carter said, it's against the spirit of the MRTA altogether to allow that and not this.
So I guess the issue is, what you're saying is, it's not the JV model per se, but it's how that is pursued.
Yes.
Or no? Yes.
I mean, I understand that they need these, investors. A lot of the social and economic, even the nonprofits, will need investors. But like, for instance, the Doe Fund actually didn't need these investors. The Doe Fund could have done what Housing Works is doing and do it. Like, it just, something feels wrong. Is it me? It's not adding up. Okay.
I think I generally agree with you, Mar. I just think I don't think we're adopting this stance, but I don't think we should necessarily say that every nonprofit that comes up needs to fully operate, in-house, because that may not be.
No,
Just
like everything else we do on its own merit. So it's a case-by-case situation. For me, this just feels so wrong on so many levels. I mean, each kind of point of this business model is off. And also, it defies the spirit of the MRTA. And if this is what we're getting right out of the gate, these are the first two dispensaries. And we saw a great model, and then we saw one that is exactly what happened in California, exactly what happened in Colorado, so that those states had no hope of fulfilling their social and economic equity directive. No hope, because of things like this. It's my opinion. Juan?
Yeah, and I guess for me, my biggest concern is that I just don't see how sustainable their plan is on like serving the community, because I do think that one of the important things we should consider is the transitional, like the ideological transition that we're gonna have to face in the next coming years over normalizing having cannabis sold in as retail. And I don't understand I don't know what an entity like them what reason they would have to stay in New York if another state became more profitable for them to move there. And I just don't think that having like businesses open up and shut down within a year, I don't think that would let our community like kind of like begin normalizing these stores.
Thank you. I mean, I guess we do have to consider, you know, the balance of, we're still in economic recovery from COVID. I mean, that's a fact. But I don't know. Let's do a preliminary vote and take the temp and see where everybody's at. Patricia? Yay or nay? Should we
do a path? I think a path.
A deny with a path?
Yes.
Juan?
I say no.
Okay, Anthony?
I would.
Cheryl?
I would say no, but with a path, like how we can help them get there.
Okay, William?
Yeah, I think I'm fine with the path. I guess my question is, maybe we've already answered it, but like, what exactly do we have the authority to do? But I think providing a path is fine. Yeah, I mean, that's fine with me. I'm still not 100% clear on exactly what we can deny.
The path is we address each point that is in contention with their application, right? With their questionnaire, the things about their business model that don't suit our community according to us. And we give them a chance to come back and maybe amend some of those things to better suit this community. Carter,
I'm good with that.
do you have something to say?
Sorry,
No.
my computer is running slow.
Oh,
So it takes me a while to unmute. You know, one of the things is that we have two nonprofits, one that's taking the money, right, from the operation, and the other applicant is fully integrating their application, you know, their dispensary into their business model. And, you know, and I bring that up because that's a big part about why we're all, you know, I think people are much more pleased with Housing Works because they're fully embracing it into the Housing Works model, including employee training, you know, trying to broaden the community. And I didn't hear any of that from the other applicant. And I think that that's a basis on which we can comment for the card licenses, right? You know, with their elbow room of how they're operating, you know, in the 70 hours a week and et cetera. And Janine raised a really great point. You know, it's the competition with the black market with illegal businesses is just not, I mean, that's an excellent point. You know, that's not who you're competing against. And a lot of the clientele who come are looking for exactly what both applicants said, which is, you know, properly regulated marijuana in all of its different forms, that you know what's in it, and that it's safe, and cannabis, excuse me, right, the broader term cannabis, everything that's in it. And you know, and so I think that that's, you know, those are important aspects of this, that this, and that's why we all feel uncomfortable, right? Because it's just saying we're going to throw you the proceeds, which may be very well written into the law, but what we see with Housing Works is they're fully integrating it. And for anybody who's walked into a Housing Works store, when somebody is a new employee, and the way they say hello and greet you, and you know, you really start to understand the fuller model of what they're working with and trying to do. And I think, Mara, you pointed out, you know, for the Doe Fund itself, you know, it doesn't seem to extend up through where they could use this as a later process in some of their programs to help people. And that may be something, since, you know, the big question that people often ask is, where are you going to hire from? And, you know, that's something that, I know Shirley, Dr. Smith has asked, of people and other things. And that's a question that I think is reasonable to ask. Where are you going to hire from? And here you have one of the larger, well-funded nonprofits has an opportunity to use this retail space to train people and incorporate them into their business model. So I just bring that out because I think those are things that we can ask for them to better integrate this store into all of that, as part of our response as one of the first nonprofit card applications in the state. And I think that that's something, as I said before, it's just confusing because that's what people think that these applicants are supposed to be doing, right? I mean, at least I did early on until learning more. Thanks.
Thank you, Carter. So I'm going to end with Dr. Smith. Dr. Smith.
Thank you. I think what we have to also consider, I love everybody's comments. When the Doe Fund, if I'm not mistaken, was first, in fact, there's a man who started the Doe Fund, actually, who lives in Soho. I went to his house once and I've forgotten his name. He was doing a fundraiser. But the idea was to take people who, had been incarcerated for, I think, drugs, I'm not sure. And they brought them into the Soho area to clean. And they were basically people who cleaned the streets. And also, I don't know if the people from the bid, I don't think it has anything to do with the bid, but the idea was to use these people to clean up the neighborhood. So the idea that you're saying, and I think is really on point, is that why not then elevate those people, not just to be street cleaners, but to elevate them, to train them and let them learn how to sell, and I think that might be a point that you could use in your decision if you're going to give them a pass. I don't know.
Absolutely. That will absolutely be.
Carnegie sort of mentioned it to, no, I don't know if it was Carnegie. Someone mentioned that the people who were in blue, I think, Mar, you asked a question about the blue.
Men in blue, but they get drug tested, including cannabis testing, which I think is like a little contradictory if they're going to own a cannabis dispensary.
Yeah,
it's a bit hypocritical.
Yeah, but also too, they have people that they could elevate. They don't have to be, the model can go from.
And Robert said that. He said,
yeah. Yeah, and they'll be trained. I think they're willing to train them if that's brought up.
I feel like the Doe Fund is such a, they have so much money and they're such a big organization. It should be beyond just letting, some of their graduates work in the store. They should have a whole entrepreneurship program around this. I mean,
maybe some of those people could become owners themselves.
Exactly. They could
entrepreneurs themselves.
So much more, much more. And we didn't hear that from them. We didn't hear any of that. In fact, when they did their questionnaire, and this was another, really marked difference. What is your mission? Right? Because it's supposed to be a qualifying nonprofit. And they're like, we're a lifestyle brand selling high-end cannabis to, 21.
That also could be.
I was like, this is not the question we're asking.
But Mark, they might also be using consultants who might not know contemporary community standards too.
But that's also an issue.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, good. So, Juan,
ideas could be given to them to maybe.
Juan, would you be willing to amend your vote to deny with a path?
Yes, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you so much. All right. Carter, I'm trying to adjourn. What do you want now?
I was going to say, I do think that we need to pass a resolution on supporting efforts to enforce the rules. And it doesn't need to be super in depth, but I think it's a big part of the success of these businesses. And it's something that I think that the community support for that is important because there's so many challenges in the enforcement. The fact that between the two precincts that straddle both sides of Broadway, that there are 97 unlicensed, complaints of unlicensed businesses. That's pretty staggering number. It's very high. And I think that we need to also, support OCM, the precincts, and the mayor, the sheriff's office, in saying this is important to us. We understand, certainly, that's very challenging and complicated, and there's many other issues. But the overall idea of enforcement is so important to the success of this program, and it's going to take a while. And by the time, if they don't start the enforcement more aggressively, by the time we start getting other candidates for retail storefronts, it's still going to be a challenge for them. And given all the benefits, I just think it's important, how we do it, when we do it, whatever it may be. I just think we need to do it. And again, I don't think it needs to be overly complicated.
No, I absolutely agree with you, because yeah, they need to do what they said they were going to do. So I will share information this week about the enhanced enforcement efforts that are in the works, so you guys all know what's going on. But yeah, I agree. I'm not against doing that. All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Before you adjourn,
So
Smart committee, no, I'm not going to do the card. I just want to commend you. It's been extremely informative, and thank you so much for your work.
Thank you so much, Dr. Smith. Thank you for coming and all your thoughtful comments.
Thank you.
All
Good night,
right.
everyone, and happy holidays.
I
Happy
echo that. Thank you,
holidays.
Mar.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.